Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 10X Go to Market podcast and AMA. And today I am very excited to have Stevie here with us to talk all things sales, also gaming, all the things. I'm sure we'll get off topic on a million different tangents. For those of you who haven't joined these before, this is really an opportunity to ask wonderful, phenomenal, successful people in the go to market world all of your burning questions. So feel free to ask questions as we go, but I am so excited to dive in. So I'm going to dive right into Stevie's background and then we'll start getting into questions. But first, Stevie, thank you so much for being here. Stevie is the CRO of Vanta, which is a phenomenal company. I think one of the most fastest growing startups to exist. Stevie brings over 2 decades of tech expertise. She not only is a phenomenal seller and sales leader, but she's actually the world's first female professional gamer before expanding into tech. And beyond her work in Vanta, she's the founding partner of 20 Sales, which is an awesome consultancy and investment arm helping early stage founders with sales. And Stevie's leadership philosophy centers on building high performance teams and developing customer-centric products. So welcome, Stevie. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here. Really looking forward to the conversation.
What did I miss in your background? Anything else you want to share with us?
I have all kinds of wild backstory, so I'm sure we'll get into it. But I think you hit the highlights. I do have to say, too, I'm coming to you live tonight from Dublin. I'm in Dublin, Ireland with my crew here. So I'm on the other side of the world tonight and having a great week with the Vanta team, both in London and in Dublin.
There we go. I was going to say, it looks like you're in a hotel room, but I didn't want to assume. But now we can assume.
Yeah, exactly right.
Awesome. Well, maybe let's start out in the early days, your origin story. You were the first female pro gamer and then worked in game development before getting into tech. What's that all about? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that all happened extremely accidentally, to be completely honest. I should say, though, it's not necessarily so shocking if you knew me when I was younger. Not because I was into gaming, although I did have an Apple IIe, old school days. But I was always a kid who was maybe the nice way to put it was, like, now a bit of an outlier. I was the only, girl on the T-ball team in, my suburb of Kansas City. I was always sort of, like, in these outlier positions. So, I had gone off to school to the University of Kansas. It was my intention to study law. I wanted to go and, like, be a lawyer and go into politics. I had grand ambitions of helping people through politics at that point in time. You can imagine that got slightly derailed by the reality of how that all works these days. But I was really passionate about law and, everything about, like, public service. Somewhere along the line, living in the dorms at the University of Kansas, I was living on the honors floor and I got introduced to Doom and then to Quake, which was a game that followed it, some of these early first-person shooters, fell in love with it, got really good at it, ended up competing and then beating the guy who designed and made Doom and Quake at his own game, which at the time was like a very, 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 male-dominated early days of esports, and that changed the entire trajectory of my life. That, to me, is sort of when my tech career began, even though it doesn't really look like tech. It took me from law to software and, like, building computers and learning how it all worked and ended up making games and then selling to video game developers as my first sales job was selling software to video game developers, and here we are, and I didn't even know what a CRO was 10 years ago. But that's the gig. So, yeah, it's been a kind of a wild ride.
Wow, I am pretty convinced some of the best folks in tech started their careers as a gamer or building games. I mean, you are phenomenal, incredible background. My co-founder, his first company was a gaming company. Have you seen that in the industry, a theme there?
Yeah. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. So, if you look at some of the biggest like tech CEOs out there, a lot of them have backgrounds in gaming. I was
Mm.
6 years at Twilio, and Jeff Lawson, CEO over there, he's a bit of a gamer. Toby Lutke, Shopify, he's a gamer. There are a lot of old school gamers. And a bunch of us knew each other back in the days when you still had to connect to servers by typing the IP address to play multiplayer into the console of the game. Like before really like early days internet of like IRC and ICQ and sort of early connected life. So I definitely think gaming was formative for a lot of us. And not only did it create community, but it drove a lot of creativity and it drove a curiosity about technology. And back then, it was you didn't just go buy a computer off the shelf. Like if you were competing in gaming, you learned to build your own machines and you learned about hardware components and you were big on NVIDIA before the AI boom. You were into like
Oh.
GPUs and like that was true for a lot of us. So there are absolutely many, many secret gamers you would never expect running big tech companies and making big pieces of software.
And I think 99%, I don't have any data on this, but 99% of those gamers then go on to become more of the tech side of the house. And you might be the 1% that didn't become an engineer. Again, I have no data to back that up. I'm just going to guess. How did that go? Because you had this engineering skill set, but you still made your way to sales.
Yeah, also accidental. This is maybe sort of a theme in my life. Like I very much like to embrace discomfort. So a lot of what has guided my career is that every time that I have been given an opportunity that felt uncomfortable, that to me was an indicator it was a correct choice and the thing I should do.
Mm.
So if I felt that like kind of fear or the discomfort and or just the uncertainty about what the job was, I ran towards it instead of away from it. So, I was making games and designing levels and doing sort of 3D design and gaming. And I ended up having this. I was working at Warner Brothers making mobile games at this point, had a guy approached me, he was a vendor to me, so I was buying his software, and he happened to say, "I need, like, a junior salesperson. I think I could teach you to sell." This concept had never crossed my mind. No one in my family has ever been in sales. I was deeply shy. I'm a hardcore introvert. No one believes me anymore when I say this because I've learned to, like, cram it down and, like, I can hide it very effectively these days, but I'm actually, like, a really big introvert. And so this idea of sales was, like, so uncomfortable and so foreign, and I thought, "This is an opportunity I will never be offered again, that I would never have found on my own. It came to me. I've got to do it." And I was very fortunate that that guy, his name's Matt Golden, he's a venture capitalist now, ended up being just this amazing mentor, and he taught me to sell. He, like, took me on the road. This was the days of in-person selling, and we went meeting to meeting and met with people and tried to sell our software, and he showed me what was good, and then he would give me, like, very critical feedback. And, without that, I would have never been here, never even considered the career. So very grateful to him for changing the trajectory of my life.
That's incredible. And the thing that stands out that you mentioned was embracing the discomfort, which I think is so important for sales, especially sales or startups where, first of all, you're going to get no's every single day. Like in sales, you just have to be okay with that. You're going to get more no's than yeses sometimes. Do you feel like this you just had innately in you, or was this a learned skill to jump into?
It was a learned skill. It was not in me. It was, like, deeply not in me. I was very bad at it at first, to be clear. And, like, Matt made that very clear in the most helpful way possible that, like, I was not actually good at this. And, I'm a very competitive person, so that did drive me, but I didn't even really know where to start with sales. I didn't I just didn't know even, like, what are the building blocks of the skills you need or, like, what is this even supposed to look like? And there were a couple of moments in his mentorship of us going out on the road together that started to break that apart and help me see what it was about. And one of those that stands out to me was we went into this meeting, we were selling to a big media company, and somehow we got at this meeting that we probably never should have gotten at a huge brand media company with a guy that very much did not wanna meet with us. And so the meeting started off, like, very awkward, like, the guy was being a jerk, he was being very difficult, he did not wanna be there, he did not want he had no interest in what we were selling. His boss or someone had made him take the meeting. And Matt just sort of, like, very elegantly was kind and approachable and vulnerable. He sort of made light of the situation. He acknowledged this person's feelings in a way that got him to start to open up. And, there was no magical transformation that happened immediately, but he did get the door cracked. And we ended up ultimately getting a deal done at that company. And when we left that meeting, Matt's coaching walking out of that was, this is a human endeavor. And sometimes people just mirror back your energy to you. So if you can go into these situations where people are aggressively not wanting to interact with you or like mean or whatever, if you can just make yourself comfortable being vulnerable and acknowledge the discomfort and give the other person permission to be a little more human, you can like crack the door sometimes. Doesn't always work, but it's worth a try. And it's like what you put out, you will get back. And so I started practicing that, and it was like a magic trick. It started to feel like, oh, there's like something here. And I had always been so shy. So this idea that like it kinda made me realize, like, "Oh, I'm really shy," and so that makes the people around me feel uncomfortable because they feel shy. And so I started practicing sort of, like, pretending to be very comfortable in these situations and putting people at ease, and at first, it was, like, so hard and so deeply, like, not in me, but I saw the result, and it started to work, and, like, I started to build rapport, and it was just this, like, magical unlock in my brain. And from that point forward, I thought, "Oh, like, this is kinda like a game." And the more real I am about it, like, the more authentic I am and the more vulnerable I am, the more effective it is. And so I got really excited about it because it became this game of, like, how do you access the humanity of the other people in the situation you're in? And then you get the fun of, like, turning that into a deal and, like, all the art of the deal because I actually love the art of the deal as well. Like, that's part of what I love about sales. It's, like, this great marriage of humanity and technology and math and strategy. It's, like, all the things. But cracking that human element was the first time I thought, like, "Oh, this is freaking cool. Like, I could get into this." And I actually saw a path. And so that was the inflection point. It took me a long time to actually get good at it, but that was a moment when I thought, "Okay, I can actually do this."
It's incredible and very inspiring for myself, and I'm sure people listening, that you can go from, feeling as an introvert, still being an introvert, but having the ability to connect. And I remember there's a book called Seven Rules of Power from Jeffrey Pfeffer. He was my professor at business school. And I remember he said, you can gamify everything, like treat everything as a game. Like there's a way to win the game, there's a way to lose the game, and just think about it as winning. And that reminded me what you said of like, the end result of winning is connecting with this person and making them feeling your authenticity and opening up. And from a sales perspective, there's nothing better than turning a blocker into a champion. That's like the ultimate best feeling.
It really is, and, people, do ask me, like, what is in common between that starting gaming and the CRO role, and honestly, I feel like a lot. I deeply believe you can gamify everything, and that doesn't mean that the engagement isn't authentic. Like, to me, I deeply care about the people I work with and honestly, the people that I sell to as well, like, that connection is authentic, but I do think about it in terms of managing resources and how do we win? We do strength finders at Vanta on the leadership team to like understand each other better. Of course, my number one characteristic was competitiveness. That is like competition number one. Always has been, always will be. So I think that honestly, like my competitive nature just helped me overcome all of that discomfort around sales because I just deeply wanted to win. I wanted to win at the thing I didn't know how to do, and that's what's driven, the growth in my career since then.
That's awesome. Do you think all sales leaders have that competitive edge and you need that to be successful? And sales reps.
I don't think everybody has it. I do think you need it to be great. I think you can be successful without it, and I think there are a lot of people who are successful without it, but there are a lot of things that go into success. One of the biggest takeaways for me, like, I grew up without money. I didn't have any understanding of, like, how do companies raise money? How do people do business? Like, this was not a thing. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a social worker. I grew up in the country in Kansas City, or outside of Kansas City, and so, like, all of these concepts were foreign to me, and so, like, learning how to access that stuff and, like, how to build businesses and, like, all of that came later. So, conquering that has been a big part of the journey, and I do think that, like, the competitiveness is what it takes to drive greatness and, like, a growth mindset. There are a lot of companies where you can succeed, you can have great careers, you can have great income without being super competitive, but I truly believe if you wanna be a part of an A plus hyper growth startup and you wanna do something like truly like build a generational company, you gotta have that competitive fire inside of you because it takes the drive every single day, and that's gotta come from inside you instead of from other outside factors.
Something I'm hearing you speak when you say competitive, it and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth. It almost feels like competitive with yourself. Like, how can I get better? How can I continue out of a growth mindset? Like, I came from knowing nothing about business to being one of the best in business. So, do you think about competition as competition with yourself, with other people on your team, with the actual competition that you're winning deals against? Like, how do you think about that? And then maybe how do you use that to hire people on your team?
I would say I do think about it in terms of myself, but I am very competitive with whoever I identify to be that external competition. I intentionally do not identify that competition as people I work with, people on my team, people a part of my circle. Like, I deeply want to support my team, my peers, my coworkers. Like, they are on my team, and I view us as competing against the outside world.
Hmm.
um, Another random fun fact, so back in the day, there was a book called Masters of Doom. I appeared in that book 20 years later. The guy who wrote that book wrote a profile of me in Vanity Fair, and the title of the article, this man knows me well, was Stevie Case versus the world, and that is deeply real for me, and it's not
I
because I
love
want to
that.
compete against everybody, like, I don't wanna compete against the people inside my circle, but I want to crush the competition outside my circle, and I think how it does translate to something that is deeply, like, personal and competition with myself is that I don't look to externalize blame for losing.
Mm.
When I lose or I don't win or whatever, I don't achieve the mission, I look inward, and I don't care if it's my responsibility, my job, whatever. All I look for is what can I do about it? What can I do better? What can I get done faster? How can I improve the situation for everybody who's inside my circle on my team? And so I do drive myself very hard to win. And if I don't win, I look inward instead of outward.
That's phenomenal, and that's what you need to have in fast-growing startups, because everything is broken all the time, that there will always be something you can blame externally, but that doesn't do anyone good. Like, you need to figure out what could you have done better. That's and how do you hire people with that same sense of internal competition and motivation and growth mindset? Like, what do you look for? What does the interview look like? Because for you, looking at your resume, people would be like, how is she a CRO 10 years after not knowing what a CRO is?
Yeah.
And you're phenomenal at it. So I'm sure there's some kind of ways that you find folks like that as well.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the AI will definitely disqualify me for any job ever. Like, pretty much every job I've had in the last 20 years, if I had applied through the website, I would have never gotten an interview. And, I am mindful of that, number one. So I really like people who come from less traditional backgrounds. That's hard to do at scale. So I have come to believe that the way that you identify those type of folks is you're looking for people with grit and high agency. So you don't want to hear about blame. So I like to ask about past roles, things that have gone wrong. Like when something went wrong in a past role, what went wrong and what did you do about it? And what I'm looking for is it's okay to assess the situation and identify that there were causes. But what I want to hear is like, well, and here's the plan I made and here's what I did. And to me, the green flags are always like reaching beyond what you were actually responsible for and doing more. And the red flag is, well, this person didn't do their job and therefore I failed. Like to me, that is like deal breaker, always deal breaker. Like that can be factually true, but if that is your focus, it will always be problematic. So I'm looking for folks who will internalize what do I have control over? What can I do? I also love to look for grit. And so looking for grit for me is about people who have gone after things that took a long time to achieve, that were really hard to achieve. And that doesn't have to be at work. That could be passions, interests. You want somebody with high curiosity that can tell you about something that they've been going after for a long time to achieve and like that they're really excited about. So if you see that excitement rise, you see what they're talking about that they've learned, like those are the green flags that I look for to say that's somebody who's got the curiosity and the drive that comes from inside and they're going to bring that same level of energy to the job and to the role and they're just going to teach themselves how to win here. And I don't think that's something you can force on somebody. You've gotta have that internal drive. So I just look to find that in people and, I care a lot less about the resume and if they can prove to me they've done it at another company, frankly, I don't really care. Like, I wanna know they have that grit and the drive and the desire. If they've got that, they can learn the rest.
One thing you mentioned that's my biggest pet peeve on interviews, and I feel like it's the biggest tell, is when I say, why are you leaving? Why are you looking for your next role? And seeing if the person is, I wasn't given the opportunity. I was told I was going to be able to do this, but I wasn't. And it's, you had an opportunity. You could have gone and undid it. So I definitely appreciate that perspective. I would be curious because Vanta, you all hired and grew like crazy. So how do you make sure that you're hiring folks as rapidly as you need to hit your numbers while also maintaining really high standards for sales reps?
Yeah, that has been a big part of the journey. We have hired and grown really quickly. So when I joined the company, we were about 180 folks. We had 20 people in sales. Today, flash forward not quite 3 years, I've got a 300-person team. We have a huge sales organization globally, and we're just tripling down on that org right now as well. So we're hiring dozens of SDRs and
Wow.
your dozens of sales reps and account managers and all these folks. So I have found that there are a few things that really matter. One is you absolutely have to write it all down. The work to write down the hiring loop documents and write down the questions and have consistency person to person is mission number 1. So you get that like equal playing field of the same questions every time and you can compare what is a great answer versus what is a less great answer. So that is kind of table stakes. Second, beyond that, is I have really found that the interviews are great. Salespeople can talk. You can finesse an interview that is just like you telling a story. It's really hard to finesse an exercise. And what we found at Vanta is that every role we have built an exercise that is very unique to the role. We try to do as a, I actually went back and finished, it took me 25 years to finish my undergrad degree, whole nother story. One of the last classes I took finishing that degree was about business success and like and one of the chapters was on hiring and one thing that really stuck with me was this idea of realistic job preview and how when you're hiring someone, the more honest and open and realistic you are about what the actual job is and the real challenges are, the more likely that person is both to be successful and to stay. So we've identified these practices and these exercises that give this realistic view of what the job is. So whether that's having them listen to real world sales calls, read our real world playbooks, and then give us their hot takes, like what did you learn? Like, what did you hear in these calls? What does this tell you about what we're doing well and not well? Where would you start if you came tomorrow? Those are the kind of things that we roll out. So we have a specific exercise that goes with every role. And that exercise is absolutely make or break. And a lot of people do fall apart because that's when the rubber hits the road and you can't just finesse a conversation.
I love it. I find that as well. We have take-home exercises as well as back channeling and references, especially for sales. Engineers, you can't hack an interview as much as sellers can hack an interview. That is from so that I appreciate that. I'd be curious with this new world of AI, and sales reps are going to rely on AI. I mean, I'll see if you believe in that, but in my perspective, they'll rely on AI a lot to do research and insight gathering and assisting them throughout deals. If that's the case, how does the role and skills that sellers need change over time?
Yeah, I think it actually demands more of sellers. So I'm a huge fan of leveraging AI to drive workflows. We're leveraging some great tools at Vanta, things like Clay, things like Hyperbound. Like we're leveraging some great stuff, but it really demands more diligence of the humans. So I don't look at those as replacements for humans. I look at these as ways to augment what is great about our humans. We are investing both in AI and a huge SDR team that picks up the phone and calls people. Like these things are not mutually exclusive. I believe they go together. I think what's particularly unique in our business, though, is, Vanta is a trust management platform. Trust is at the core of our business. Our platform helps other companies become compliant, prove that they're secure. And because trust is so central to our products and our company and our mission, frankly, it's incumbent on us as a go-to-market organization to reflect that. So as we adopt new AI technologies and really any kind of new workflow, think we just have to be extra mindful that we do it in a way that is respectful of prospects and customers, and that we do it in a way that's reflective of that core mission of our company of trust. So we have really been thoughtful in the way we have built those workflows. We're starting to build a team now in RevOps that actually owns those AI powered workflows, and they're definitely driving great efficiency. But it's like very focused on how do we reduce the drudgery and the manual work that takes away from the creativity that we get from our incredible team of sellers.
I love it. And I know we only have 2 minutes left. Maybe where we can end, I'd love to hear the best piece of advice you've received about building and scaling. And then if you have the worst piece of advice that that you don't agree with and how to build and scale a sales team.
Yeah, I would say the best. We'll go with the best first. So, the best piece of advice that I've gotten is that it really is math. It's all math at the end of the day. I had an incredible mentor, COO at Twilio, where I was for 6 years. His name is George Hu. And, he taught me this math based playbook for building an incredible go to market organization. So, understanding your inputs, your outputs, your resourcing, and everything about what's happening in your business and the math that backs that up. If you don't do that, you might as well hang it up because you do not understand what's happening in your business. Know your math, and you will ultimately figure out how to succeed. The worst advice is, there has been more than one person along my journey that has told me you have to be aggressive and a jerk to be in sales, and that you've got to have this certain persona. I had a guy who shall remain nameless at one point when I was a VP of sales who was supposed to be mentoring me, who kind of gave me a lecture and said, my VP sales, he's got 5 kids. He's never home. He's on the road 5 days a week. And you know what? He loves it. It just takes a certain kind of person. The implication being, I was not that kind of person because I have a child who I love and a family that I want to see, and I care about things outside of work. And I'm a woman, like, well, and so for me, like the biggest takeaway is, look, I am crushing it, and I'm doing it in a way that does not reflect that story. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be aggressive. You can love your life. You can be a kind person, and you can still be wildly successful in sales.
Wow, that was a beautiful ending. Incredible. I totally agree with that. That guy sounds like a mega jerk. I'm glad you don't agree with his advice. Such a beautiful message. And I know we're at time, Stevie. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours. You have such an incredible background and journey. I truly mean that. Phenomenal. Where can people find you? Do you post on LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere else?
I do. Yeah, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So would love people to follow me there. Love to connect there. I post a lot about the journey at Vanta and what we're building and just sales in general. So that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stevie. This was incredible.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.